So I recently received a message from a friend back home, and he sent me this. He said, I'm trying to digest this with an open mind, and I'm curious what your opinion is. He attached these screenshots here. Pete Hegseth, the Fox News host who has never led troops in combat. Wait right there. Pete was a platoon leader for a 39-man air assault infantry platoon in Iraq from 2005 to 2006, which earned him a Bronze Star. Pete has 2 of those, by the way. Now, there was some misconception whether it was for valor or meritorious service, and the Iraq one was for the latter. The Washington Post scrutinized how commonly Bronze Stars were awarded during the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. Now, whether this was to discredit Pete's Bronze Star or not, in my opinion, degrades the medal and is a huge disservice to all the folks who have earned it. Folks such as Oliver Stone, Pat Tillman, John McCain, hell, even Tony Bennett. Tony was awarded his Bronze Star when he served as a PFC in the 63rd Infantry Division. All right, let's continue. Never managed an organization larger than a TV green room. And then says, and has been hospitalized for stress-related issues while running the Pentagon. Well, let's pause again. There's no public record of Pete Hegseth being hospitalized for stress. However, he has openly discussed his struggles with post-traumatic stress after his military service. So, again, the very start of this is disingenuous at best, but let's continue further. Just fired one of America's most decorated Army generals and replaced him with his own personal aide. Defense Secretary Hegseth has ousted General Randy George as Army Chief of Staff, forcing him into immediate retirement more than 2 years before his term was set to end. First of all, yes, General George is decorated, but calling him one of America's most decorated generals is a bit of a stretch. MacArthur, now that's a man that has some decorations. But for some perspective here, President Truman fired General MacArthur because he violated orders from the president. And, well, it's the president's prerogative whether to relieve a general or not when he's lost faith in his ability to lead.
I have therefore considered it essential to relieve General MacArthur so that there would be no doubt or confusion as to the real purpose and aim of our policy.
George is a West Point graduate and career infantry officer who served in Desert Storm, Iraq, and Afghanistan, a man who has spent decades in actual combat so that people like Pete Hegseth could spend decades on cable television. Okay, let's roll that back a bit too. Decades in combat? No, not really, but kind of. General George did serve in Desert Storm, but was an aide to the S3 shop, basically a staff officer helping to manage training. In 2003, he went to Iraq in support of OIF, but as a Brigade XO, basically a second-in-command to the brigade commander. Now, I don't know what happened here, but a Brigade XO's next post should be at the brigade level, but in 2005, he deployed as a battalion commander. And then he got back on track and deployed as a commanding general in 2007. Now, I'm not downplaying the general service at all, but if I met him today, I would thank him for his service to the nation and shake his hand. General George, by the way, also received a Bronze Star for his service overseas, and just like Pete, there's no V device on it. So where was the Washington Post on this one? Look, I'm just saying, if you're going to bash a guy by comparing him to another service member, both of which have more service medals than other people in their respective ranks, Washington Post, just be better than that. Now, Pete did see combat while his boots were on the ground, but unlike General George, Pete didn't receive a Purple Heart, and, well, that's a good thing. All right, back to it. His replacement, General Christopher LaNeve, formerly Hegseth's own military aide. All right, a brief pause. General LaNeve was already a vice chief of staff, so calling him Pete's aide, although accurate, depicts him like he's the guy getting Pete's coffee or something. Okay, anyway, back to it. Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell helpfully explained that LaNeve is completely trusted by Secretary Hegseth to carry out the vision of this administration without fault. Without fault. That's the job requirement now? Not combat experience, not strategic brilliance, not the respect of the troops, blind loyalty to Hegseth and Donald Trump without fault. Okay, he asked if the job requirement now is without fault, right? It always has been. Loyalty. Let me tell you, loyalty is one of the Army core values and listed as the first core value. The Army defines it as bearing true faith and allegiance to a matter of believing in and devoting yourself to something or someone. So yeah, blind loyalty is something that happens at every rank at every level, period. So a man completely trusted by Pete to carry out the vision of the administration, that's exactly what the position is. The president is the commander-in-chief. Pete's job is to fill the objectives given to him by the commander-in-chief. That's it. The Joint Chiefs of Staff, those people are there to advise the president. Advise. That's it. Don't believe me? Just look it up. I'll leave a link below to the jcs.mil website. General George is at least the 13th senior military officer Hegseth has fired or forced out, and then he goes on to name them all. The United States military is being systematically stripped of its most experienced leadership and replaced with loyalists, not because the old guard failed, but because they might say no. Well, let's take a look at that. The generals in the Pentagon are not in the position to say no to their commander. Period. It's just like an Army captain can't say no to a major. The only time you can say no or refuse an order is if it's unlawful. The issue here is that the military, there's this thing that's known as the presumption of lawfulness. If you're going to disobey a direct order because you think it's illegal, you better be damn sure it is. To prove that, the order must be patently unlawful, which is to say that it commands a positive act that constitutes a crime that is so beyond the legal power of the commander that there is zero rational doubt of its unlawfulness. It is not the commander's responsibility to prove an order is lawful. It is presumed lawful. Refusing an order, especially one coming from the highest levels like Sec War or the commander-in-chief, man, UCMJ is coming for your ass. Everything that you earned and worked for will be all for nothing. No retirement, no rank, no benefits. And if they find you guilty of Article 90 or 91, the only proof of your service will be documented in your DD-214 with a big fat X in the box next to dishonorable. You see, that's why you see most high-ranking officers resign, because they know that they can't just say no to their superiors just because they disagree with an order. And, you know, I'm fine with that. James Mad Dog Mattis resigned because he advised the president, but the president didn't take his advice. Mattis didn't want to follow through on what was asked of him, and he had every right to resign and make his views known. Now, not my branch, but I have the utmost respect for the man with the call sign Chaos.
So I was a colonel out in the Mojave Desert, and I had an operations officer from Brooklyn. And as I was walking out, I saw on his whiteboard, Chaos written. I said, what's that about? I found out my irreverent subordinates had decided that my call sign should be Chaos. Colonel has another outstanding suggestion.
Now this continues. And the timing here is exquisite. Just days ago, Hegseth publicly overruled the Army's own disciplinary process after Army aviators flew a military helicopter over Kid Rock's Nashville home, writing on his personal X account, "No punishment, no investigation, carry on, Patriots." Well, I don't have the whole picture of this because I don't have friends at that level of leadership. What I can tell you is this: there are things that you can do on a training mission. Did you know that you can request a military flyover? Just fill out the form DD 2535. The military will evaluate your request, and if it meets their recruitment goals with their training schedule, hell, they might just say yes. Now, I don't think this was the case here, but I could be wrong. And really, the only true questions that should be raised here is, was the flight conducted safely, and were there any violations of AR 95-1, the Army Flight Regulations? Hell, it is known that there were helicopters already operating in the area, so I guess the FAA could make a case on this if they wanted to, but we both know that won't happen. So, just like Pete said, carry on, Patriots. Okay, let me sum this whole thing up for you. First off, I found the original post where my buddy's screenshots were derived from. It was from a LinkedIn account belonging to Philippe, and I don't want to butcher his name, so Philippe it is. Philippe, according to LinkedIn, where throughout the entire internet was the only place I could find him, apart from his photography site and some stats as a footballer in the 80s, is that he is in some way affiliated with Lyme, Switzerland, which is a non-profit association founded in 2024, focusing on vector-borne diseases. Lyme. At the end of Philippe's post, he asked, "Do you feel safe now?" So I have to ask, do you feel less safe because a U15 football coach in Switzerland made a post that is chock full of inaccuracies and mischaracterizations? Really, I want to know. Let me know in the comments. As for me, do I like Sec War Pete? No, not entirely. But just like any person, well, almost any person, there are some things I can get behind and agree with, and there are some things that I disagree with and I think are wrong. But just like Major Winter said in the old HBO series Band of Brothers,
we salute the rank, not the man.
Well, that's it for me today. As for you, my friend, I wish you have a wonderful day, and don't let what you see online or read in the headlines dictate how you feel. You have a life to live. Philippe has no authority as to how you live your life, unless you give him that authority. Live today the best way you can, and tomorrow the sun will rise just as it always has, and fucking enjoy your tomorrow too. I'll see you later, and for those who serve, as you were, Patriots. As you were.
All right, thumbs up. Let's do this. Leroy!
Oh my God, he just ran in.